Neighbors won't soon forget the sound of this gunfire. They're saddened by the death of Ron Ely's 62-year-old wife, Valerie Lundeen, and their 30-year-old son, Cameron. Officers say she was stabbed to death and that he was a suspect shot and killed by deputies on Tuesday night.
It's just so sad that two people lost their lives last night. You know, we're devastated over here, and we're frankly very, very surprised. We didn't think a thing like this would happen.
The tradition in the Ivy League is incredible.
Cameron is being remembered as a San Marcos football player and scholar who went on to Harvard before transferring to play football in Texas.
I didn't know until I saw the Harvard-Yale game this year, and seeing 50,000 screaming fans at the Soldier Field was incredible.
He was a really good football player. He was about 6'6", and he could throw the ball really well. He's the all-time leading passer in our school's history.
His mother, a former Miss Florida, is being remembered by other moms who sent their kids to Vieja Valley Elementary.
I just feel like Valerie was just sunshine. She was just so happy and loving and and so beautiful, and not only on the outside, but she was so beautiful on the inside, and just loving and caring, and I just want people to know what a great mom she was.
They are survived by the actor who played Tarzan in the 1960s and their two grown daughters. An SUV and an electric car involved in a fatal three-car crash were burned beyond recognition. A Camaro that witnesses say crossed the double yellow lines into oncoming traffic ended up on the 154 bridge.
Unfortunately, we have 3 fatalities.
Firefighters put out the car fire and then had to put out a brush fire caused by the crash. Debris covered the roadway. Investigators say a woman and 2 young children died in the electric vehicle. A man and his 13-year-old son escaped their burning GMC Denali and tried to help. And the driver of the Camaro received life-threatening injuries.
He was extricated on the bridge where the vehicle came to rest and was transported by an American Medical Response ambulance a short distance to an awaiting CalStar ambulance, air helicopter that was flown to Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital with his injuries.
Firefighting helicopters and hand crews put out the hot spots along the 154 before sundowner winds kicked in.
Regardless of whatever road. Stop.
Sergeant Steve Reed, just 6 days from retiring, kept crews and cars away from the crash site.
This is a crime scene. We don't know. We have an idea how the collision occurred. There were 3 victims. 3 people were tragically killed in this collision, and that's a crime.
It's not mine. It's not real.
It was a surprise that brought 19-year-old Kiana Carbajal to tears.
Yes, and this is Tara.
On Friday, Kiana thought that she was on her way to pick up some gift cards from a nonprofit, but instead,
this is mine.
She was handed keys to a car that she can now call her own.
It feels unbelievable, like surreal, like I'm dreaming.
The Ventura County resident has come a long way since she was first placed in the foster care system at the age of 2. She lived in 32 different homes growing up. But now she's aged out and is part of the independent living program.
When she turned 18, she moved into an apartment which is supervised, and she's living independently, and she is navigating this world as an adult.
Nearly 200 young adults age out of the foster care system every month in California. One of the biggest barriers for them is transportation. Kiana knows this firsthand.
I actually just had to let go of a job because it was too much trying to get to and from work.
She's been Ubering, and she was spending more money on Ubers than she was earning every week.
A foster care nonprofit called James Storehouse reached out to the community to help Kiana. Tara Weber and her family stepped up.
My dad gave us the car several years ago for my 3 teenage boys to learn how to drive and to go back and forth to school. So it was time for us to give up the car, and we wanted to share the blessing that we were given.
Kiana says that this is a start to a new life.
I'm almost there, like I'm almost to the top, and I feel like I'm gonna be successful.
In Newberry Park, I'm News Channel reporter Senere de Los Santos.
She's golden.
Come on. Oh my God.
The LA Rams turned the exercise yard at the Ventura Youth Correctional Facility into a football field.
Ready, go! Nice, back to this cone.
Past and present Rams players and expert coaches ran incarcerated teens and young adults through NFL drills.
It's a blessing. We appreciate it. We do it feel good. You know, you see people on TV and now you playing with them. You know, it's nice.
When I was living through it, it was definitely a tough situation.
LA Rams linebacker Dakota Allen knows what it's like to go through the system.
They ended up charging me with a second-degree.
Allen was featured in the Netflix docu-series Last Chance U. He was kicked out of Texas Tech after being charged with second-degree robbery. Ultimately, he returned and was selected by the Rams in the 7th round as the 251st overall pick in 2019. Allen says redemption is there for these youth if they want it.
They are our future, and I just really want to emphasize to them that, you know, even though you do make a mistake, that doesn't define you. It's how you bounce back from that mistake.
Looking at him, I would never thought, you know, somebody playing football at the level he is now would have been through those type of challenges that we dealing with right now.
The Rams hope the lessons learned on the gridiron will translate into the real world when these youth, ages 16 to 25, are released from the facility.
My mindset, honestly, it's all, you know, what I do. Anything can happen. It's how I take and how I filter it, and so I feel like that's really going to help me knowing that.
Last one.
The Rams, who are based in Thousand Oaks, say they believe in providing hope where it doesn't exist.
And this is the second time the LA Rams put on this clinic. They hope to make it an annual event. And here's another special thing that they did. They bought a bunch of televisions so the youth here can watch them play on Sundays. In Camarillo, I'm Elise Martinez reporting.
This is actually my first time playing a piano in a really long time. And I saw the pianos out here and I was like, oh my God. So I've probably been playing for about 6 hours today. So it's just been like a real cool thing, a blessing to be able to see these, and I guess they're all over State Street. When a city or community puts something like this out there, there's an acknowledgement, like there's something more than the humdrum. I believe in God. It gives me confidence to come out here looking like a crazy person, you know what I'm saying, and just rock. As a musician, I really appreciated seeing it.
This all happened and we were looking for treasures. One of the treasures I really wanted to get back was this quilt that I made for Dave.
Kim Canton gazes at the long-lost quilt she sewed for her late husband. Every stitch made with love. The quilt now back in her arms after nearly a year buried beneath the mud. The quilt was inspired by this photo of her husband Dave and son Jack scuba diving in Catalina.
I silhouetted that and I put that on as kind of the focal point of the quilt, and I named the quilt First Dive.
Dave loved the quilt and proved it when the family had to quickly evacuate their Montecito home during the Thomas Fire in December of 2017. Dave only grabbed 2 items to take with him.
We took a couple cars to Thousand Oaks, and Dave was probably 5 minutes behind me, and he was 5 minutes behind me because he had packed our wedding portrait and he packed the quilt.
Weeks later, Kim's life was forever changed when the Montecito mudslide tore through their home, killing Dave and Jack, a 17-year-old Eagle Scout. Jack's body is still missing. Everything was lost, but months later, after Kim recovered from serious injuries, she began to search. Not only for Jack, but for sentimental family treasures, scattered in the massive debris field. Kim wasn't alone. The Santa Barbara Bucket Brigade, a grassroots nonprofit, was right by her side, including member and contractor Ann Burgard, who last month, while digging, found one of the items Kim wanted the most, buried 4 feet down in the mud, less than a mile from the Cantons' home.
She just heaved up this massive ball of quilt that was so heavy she had to take a break because it was probably 100 pounds.
Kim was there and began to break away the caked dirt and spread the quilt out, slowly and carefully.
I noticed the checkered border, the black and white checkered border. I said, that's Canton.
The quilt today is shredded in parts, frayed and faded, but the image of her son and husband still remains.
What was so amazing is that the silhouette stayed on, which was hand sewn.
For Kim, all these months later, the silhouette of the two standing strong together is a sign from above.
I just felt it was a love letter from Dave and Jack, kind of just somehow making sure that it was a Merry Christmas.
Kim says there are still so many pockets of mud and debris in Montecito that haven't been searched. And finding the quilt is a symbol that there are more treasures waiting to be uncovered, including the body of her son Jack and 2-year-old Lydia Suditepa, who is also still missing.
I believe they're still out there, and if that helps us get to the 2 treasures we really want to find.
Kim longing now more than ever to find her son, a year later after the disaster, so he can be buried next to his father.
These massive boulders are all that's left on the Canton property, and Kim says she believes that the bodies of Jack and Lydia did not wash into the ocean last January 9th. She says she's convinced that they're still somewhere here in Montecito, and she's urging homeowners and contractors to continue using caution and care as they continue to rebuild. In Montecito, I'm Elise Martinez reporting.
Betty Meyer just turned 101 years old. She's been living happily at the Samarkand Retirement Community in Santa Barbara for about 10 years. But life took a turn for Meyer in June when her insurance company, Transamerica, sent a letter to her explaining that she no longer met the eligibility requirement. Transamerica had conducted an assessment and now was terminating her long-term care coverage, the monthly benefit that she needs to live at Samarkand.
It's very frightening for all of us.
Ann Meyer, Betty's daughter, wanted to know more about that assessment.
They did not say it was a telephone interview. They said that they sent somebody for an in-person interview. And in May, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Samarkand, the entire facility, was on lockdown and nobody could get in. I haven't been able to see my mother there since March.
The actual wording in the letter reads, an on-site assessment completed on May 8, 2020 by an independent care coordination firm, LTCG, indicates that you are independent with all the activities of daily living. Now, the letter goes on to state that she scored 10 out of 10 in cognitive testing, and based on other factors, Transamerica gave Meyer 2 weeks' notice that it was ending her coverage.
Once she was canceled from her insurance, that just sort of sent her for a loop, and she's totally depressed and, scared, frightened.
Ann Meyer says her mother needs around-the-clock assistance, something that Ann cannot provide because of her job and because she lives upstairs. Ann also says that Samarkand tried to help by filing appeals on her mother's behalf, but that didn't work, so she called the News Channel 3 tip line. We started looking into it, and we had some obvious questions. How did Betty qualify for the coverage 10 years ago, but now at the age of 101, she doesn't qualify? And we had some questions about that on-site assessment. How did somebody get in to assess Betty when nobody is supposed to be allowed inside the facility? We contacted Transamerica and the company that conducted that assessment, and neither one of them wanted to talk to us about it. And they didn't want to talk about why they did this in the middle of a pandemic.
But they obviously know the timing of this.
Oh, they have to, because one, whoever they quote unquote sent to meet my mother couldn't get in.
And to make matters worse, Ann Meyer says Transamerica started billing her mother about $5,700 a month. the full amount for her care at Samarkand.
They turned around and now are billing her. We've cut you off, now we're going to bill you.
That's when News Channel 3 got involved and started calling around trying to get answers. Transamerica Life Insurance did not return our phone calls, but a company spokesman did send us an email that reads, quote, "Thank you for contacting us. Due to customer confidentiality, we are unable to provide information to you, but we have reached out to our customer directly to address their concern," end quote. Transamerica did contact Betty Meyer and reversed its decision to terminate her coverage. She gets to stay at Samarkand where she wants to be.
Since you contacted them and she was reinstated with her insurance, and they actually even paid her for the months that they had her canceled. And so she's gotten all of that back and she's back on track.
All right.
Able to stay at Samarkand. We just can't thank you enough. We love you and adore you.
Well, what if beavers could help fight wildfires? A recent study from a Cal State Channel Islands professor proves that they can. News Channel 3 Senator De Los Santos gives us an exclusive look at how these small animals could prevent larger fires.
Much of California looks like this, dry and brown. Many experts say a year-round fire season is the new norm, but firefighters could get some help from an unlikely ally. Beavers.
These beaver ponds, they stay wet, they stay green, and they're not burning anywhere near as much as the places that don't have beavers.
Emily Fairfax is an environmental science professor at Cal State Channel Islands. She just finished a 4-year study which found beavers help rejuvenate dry land, creating patches of wilderness that are essentially fireproof. We followed her to some beaver ponds in Atascadero to see firsthand.
There are actual teeth scrape marks that you can still see. But you'll notice they didn't take every tree here. So beavers do chew trees, but they never over-extract that resource from their environment.
Beavers only cut down what they need to build their dams, to lock in water and create ponds. In the middle of the dry hillside, a patch of green land, a telltale sign of a beaver dam.
So now we're actually at the beaver's dam. And we've got the beaver dam starting all the way over on that bank, spanning all the way over to that bank. It's maybe only knee-high, slightly higher. It's not a super tall dam, but even so, it's creating this enormous pond and then having an effect all the way downstream where we can see this super lush wetland forming.
Beavers are keystone species, meaning they help shape their ecosystems by building dams that, in turn, create a wetland habitat where many other species thrive.
And in their absence, that ecosystem will collapse. And so when beavers move into rivers like this, they create wetland ecosystem. So there's all sorts of species of fish and frogs and birds and salamanders and everything else you can imagine that needs this ecosystem. And so without the beavers, these animals aren't going to make it.
Fairfax observed beaver dams before, during, and after wildfires.
The bottom of these beaver ponds is full of some very, very deep spots.
And her study found these wet patches don't burn.
The more places we have that are wet, the less places that can burn. If you imagine what the landscape would have looked like if every creek all over California looked like this, fires wouldn't be able to spread as far as they do.
Beavers aren't considered endangered, but their population numbers are low in North America. And in California, it is against the law to relocate them.
Which is a big bummer because there's lots of places where beavers are not everybody's favorite, and then there's lots of wilderness that needs beavers.
People have even tried to build dams.
People try to build, do a kind of bad job of it, and then try to basically create these systems. And luckily, one of the things that beavers do is they like to take over beaver dam analogs. So if there's beavers nearby and you kind of give them a head start, a lot of times they'll move and take it over.
So the next time you come across a beaver dam, leave it be. These animals are on the clock, hard at work fighting fires. In Atascadero, Senator De Los Santos, News Channel 3.
Beth, this afternoon here at East Beach was among the busiest I've seen since October or November. Janelle, it was pure joy for the cottage team here.
News Channel reporter Scott Sheehan is live with what's being done to speed up the process. Hi, Scott.
Beth, the million-dollar question that people are asking is, when is it my turn?
That's right. They don't always have an update on Tuesdays, but they had one today, and they talked about this Moderna batch. It went to many counties, about 3,900 in Santa Barbara County. The goal of all the watches and warnings is so that you're not caught off guard. In Carpinteria, I'm News Channel reporter Tracy Lair.